From Al Capone to Albert Anastasia to Paul Castellano, Mafia members have long been notorious figures in the criminal underworld. Their infamous deeds have caused pain for some and inspired TV shows like The Sopranos. We've all watched those iconic mob movies and heard tales of their power and influence on the streets. However, it's important to remember that these individuals are among the world's most dangerous criminals. So what happens when these ruthless individuals find themselves incarcerated, separated from the society they once controlled? Let's delve into how the prison system treats Mafia members. To gain insight into this, we'll start with a prominent figure, Michael Franzese. Here's a brief biography of Michael Franzese. Michael Franzese was born on May 27, 1951 in Brooklyn, New York City. He had a fascinating family history, initially harboring doubts about his biological father and believing that he had been adopted by John Sonny Franzese, a high-ranking member of the Colombo crime family. Michael Franzese initially believed his biological father was Frank Grillo, from whom his mother had divorced. However, it was later revealed that John, who was already married with 3 children, was, in fact, Michael's biological father. John had fathered Michael with Cristina Capobianco, a woman with whom he had an affair to avoid scandal. Capobianco later married Grillo, and John divorced his first wife, while Grillo disappeared from the picture. Michael Franzese grew up on Long Island, and his father initially discouraged him from getting involved in organized crime. However, when John was sentenced to 50 years in prison for bank robbery in 1967, Michael dropped out of college in 1971 to help financially support his family. In April 1985, Franzese was acquitted of racketeering charges. However, later that year, he faced charges related to counterfeiting and extortion stemming from a gasoline bootlegging racket in Florida and New York. Joseph Iriso, who had already been sentenced to 5 years and placed in the Witness Protection Program for his involvement in theft and tax evasion, testified against Franzese and others involved. Eventually, in March 1986, Franzese pleaded guilty to racketeering, conspiracy, and tax conspiracy charges. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, ordered to pay restitution, and had to sell his assets. Additionally, Franzese faced state racketeering charges in Florida and was sentenced to 9 years in prison, with his state sentence running concurrently with his federal sentence. He was also ordered to pay additional restitution to the state of Florida. During this period, Michael Franzese was summoned to testify at the trial of a man named Walters, who had invoked Franzese's name to intimidate college athletes. In exchange for his testimony, Franzese received immunity from prosecution in the Walters case, which ultimately led to Walters being found guilty. Following this development, Franzese was released on parole after serving 43 months in prison. However, Franzese's legal troubles didn't come to an end. In 1991, he was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for violating probation requirements. He had been arrested in Los Angeles on tax fraud charges. Prosecutors criticized Franzese for his failure to promptly make court-ordered restitution payments and viewed him as a con man. After his release in 1994, Franzese made a significant change in his life. He retired from the mob in 1995 and relocated to California with his family due to death threats and contracts on his life, including one approved by his own father. Since his release, Franzese has publicly denounced and distanced himself from his past life in organized crime. He emphasizes the negative aspects of that lifestyle and expresses remorse for his involvement. He makes it clear that he does not romanticize his previous association with the mob, acknowledging it as an evil path. One aspect he frequently discusses is his time in prison. Michael's journey behind bars began at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York, and from there, his life took a different direction. He was relocated to various prison facilities, including Phoenix, Arizona, Terminal Island, Sheridan, Oregon, and El Reno, Oklahoma. In the world of made men in prison, fear is not tied to the intimidation of any single individual. Instead, it stems from the potential consequences that can arise from making a grave mistake. Essentially, the fear experienced in prison is not specific to any particular person. Every made man has the capability to inflict harm, and understanding this is essential for any mafia member incarcerated. When you're a made guy in prison, You don't fear any one individual because everyone who has taken that oath is capable of causing harm. This is why respect holds immense value in the prison system. Many inmates seek the respect they may have lacked in their previous lives, so embracing the power of courtesy and politeness can significantly contribute to survival and navigating the complex social dynamics. As always, basic manners such as saying please, thank you, and excuse me remain as important as ever. Michael Franzese recalls a unique incident during his transfer to Terminal Island. Having spent a substantial portion of his life either incarcerated or visiting prisons, Franzese can attest to the necessity of adapting to the prison environment. Adaptation becomes imperative because there are no alternatives, and one's ability to survive in prison relies heavily on resilience, coping mechanisms, mental fortitude, and the support of like-minded individuals. For Franzese, it was his family and the Bible that kept him going. During his time in prison in 1991, Michael found himself in solitary confinement, not because he posed a threat to other inmates, but because the authorities perceived others as a danger to him, or so they claimed. This experience proved to be one of the most challenging he had ever encountered. He endured 29 months and 7 days in a place commonly referred to as the Hole. The prolonged isolation took a toll on him mentally and emotionally, making it one of the darkest periods of his life. There were moments when he quietly wished for death to come while he slept, just wanting to be left alone. He wasn't feeling suicidal that night, nor was he that brave, but he longed to lay his head on his cot and not wake up. To preserve his sanity during this trying time, Michael turned to books, consuming approximately 400 of them. His Sony Walkman provided solace as he immersed himself in music, and reading the Bible brought him comfort and guidance. This particular Bible was a gift from a correctional officer who had witnessed his suffering during incarceration. Additionally, he exercised within his cell and occasionally enjoyed solitary time in the yard. Staying connected with his family through phone calls was crucial, serving as a lifeline to the outside world. These coping mechanisms enabled him to endure the hardships of solitary confinement. Understanding the intricate power dynamics and adapting accordingly were key factors contributing to resilience and survival in prison as a Mafia member. When he was initially transferred, Michael, as the only white inmate among a group of 250 black inmates, faced taunts and threats. However, these actions were not due to his skin color, but because he was seen as new meat. In prison, people always attempt to provoke reactions, either out of a desire to test you or simply because they can. Indeed, these individuals were all convicted criminals serving their sentences. However, when news of Michael's background as a former mob member reached them through a television news flash, the situation took an unexpected turn. The inmates recognized him and, instead of hostility, greeted him with applause, providing him with a sense of respect and security. Fear remains a prevalent emotion within the prison hierarchy. Inmates often grapple with fear stemming from potential consequences for crossing boundaries or displaying disrespect. Retribution from fellow inmates or rival factions can span from physical violence to social isolation and marginalization. Fear serves as a mechanism for maintaining order, enforcing loyalty, and deterring individuals from challenging the established power dynamics. For Michael Franzese, realizing that earning respect could alleviate fear within the prison environment was crucial. It's important to note that respect doesn't make one weak or cowardly. Rather, it offers a certain level of protection and a smoother path during incarceration. By adhering to the unwritten rules and norms, he successfully avoided confrontations or issues throughout his time in prison. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that fear, especially in the absence of respect, can yield significant consequences within the prison hierarchy. In an environment marked by ever-shifting power dynamics, this fear can be exploited by those in positions of authority, such as correctional officers. These officers often harbor a deep-seated belief that Mafia members are among the worst of the worst, and their treatment of these prisoners reflects this inherent bias. While maintaining order within a prison is undoubtedly essential, fostering an environment characterized by constant intimidation and tension can perpetuate a distressing cycle of fear. This situation is detrimental to everyone involved. For Mafia members who struggle to earn or maintain respect, life behind bars can be exceedingly challenging. Without the protection and support of a respected social circle, they may become vulnerable to manipulation, abuse, or victimization. The constant fear of isolation, harm, or ostracization can take a toll on an individual's mental and emotional well-being, leading to heightened anxiety and an unrelenting need for self-preservation. When it comes to the lives of those incarcerated, it is a path that few willingly choose. Michael Franzese, who experienced prison firsthand, strongly advises against becoming an expert in prison life unless one is involved in prison ministry with a sincere desire to help others. Franzese carries a medallion with him, a dog tag bearing the word "remade." This medallion holds profound significance as it symbolizes Michael's personal journey of transformation, a journey that began in 1975. He was made when he first entered a life of crime, but later he underwent a transformation when he found faith, thanks in part to the correctional officer who provided him with a Bible during his time in solitary confinement. The medallion he carries serves as a constant reminder of his new identity and purpose, as well as a beacon of hope that treating Mafia members with humanity can positively impact their lives. These random acts of kindness hold profound significance. Let's further explore the realities of made men behind bars through the experiences of Michael Franzese. Another significant aspect of prison life is a phenomenon known as diesel therapy. This practice is considered one of the most challenging aspects of serving time in the federal prison system. It involves abrupt and often secretive transfers to unknown locations in the middle of the night. In this process, inmates are handcuffed to seats on planes that have been seized from drug dealers. The experience is both unsettling and precarious, as the constant movement between prisons leaves no opportunity for inmates to settle in or establish connections. It is a deliberate tactic employed by authorities to exert control and pressure. During Michael's encounter with diesel therapy, he spent several months being shuttled between prisons as authorities attempted to break him down. It was an immensely challenging period. However, as the saying goes, one adapts to survive. When options are stripped away, individuals often discover an inner strength they never knew they possessed. In prison, where choices are limited, the capacity for endurance and resilience becomes evident. Among the various prisons Michael encountered, Terminal Island in California holds some positive memories. Terminal Island stands out as a relatively favorable place to serve time, offering separate sections known as the North Yard and South Yard. The South Yard in particular provides individual rooms instead of dormitories, allowing inmates to have their personal space. Situated in San Pedro, Terminal Island offers a scenic view of passing boats, which can serve as a welcome distraction during yard time. The pleasant California weather adds to the overall experience. On weekends, a special treat awaited the inmates as boats filled with women would pass by, generating excitement and anticipation. Inmates would eagerly rush to the fences, hoping for a glimpse or interaction with the women on the boats. These moments provided a brief respite from the challenges of prison life and a connection to the outside world. There was also a chance for positive interactions with the guards, especially if the inmate was known not to cause any problems. However, at times, Mafia members in prison could encounter a case manager or officers who held a dislike for them. For Michael Franzese, it was one such officer who believed that all mob individuals were disrespectful to women and treated them poorly. Although he knew this stereotype was not true, she constantly gave him a hard time. One day, she passed by his cell and noticed a black and white television he had managed to acquire. She confiscated it, wrote him up a disciplinary report, and gave him a shot, which could have had negative consequences for his sentence. However, he managed to retrieve the television and resolve the issue with the assistance of a Mexican lieutenant who was familiar with him. Terminal Island is notably a more favorable place to serve a prison sentence, with distinct sections known as the North Yard and South Yard. The South Yard, in particular, stands out for offering individual rooms instead of dormitories, allowing inmates to enjoy some personal space. Located in San Pedro, Terminal Island boasts a picturesque view of passing boats, offering a pleasant distraction during yard time. The consistently pleasant California weather adds to the overall experience. On weekends, inmates were in for a special treat as boats filled with women would cruise by, sparking excitement and anticipation. Inmates would eagerly gather by the fences, hoping for a glimpse or interaction with the women on the passing boats. These moments provided a brief escape from the challenges of prison life and a connection to the outside world. There were also opportunities for positive interactions with the guards, especially for inmates known to be trouble-free. However, occasionally, Mafia members in prison could encounter a case manager or officers who harbored a dislike for them. In Michael Franzese's case, he faced such a situation with an officer who held the unfounded belief that all mob individuals were disrespectful to women and treated them poorly. Despite knowing that this stereotype didn't apply to him, she persistently gave him a hard time. On one occasion, she noticed a black and white television he had managed to acquire in his cell. She confiscated it, wrote up a disciplinary report, and issued a penalty, which could have had negative consequences for his sentence. However, he was able to regain possession of the television and resolve the matter with the assistance of a Mexican lieutenant who was familiar with him. However, this is not always the case for Mafia members in prison, as evidenced by incidents like the assault on Gambino family boss John Gotti during his time behind bars. It's essential to remain vigilant and cautious. Next, let's explore how Mafia members were treated in prison through the perspective of a well-known former Mafia member, Salvatore Gravano, better known as Sammy the Bull. Here's a brief history of Salvatore Gravano. Salvatore Gravano came into this world on March 12, 1945. Growing up in the lively neighborhood of Bensonhurst in Brooklyn, which was predominantly inhabited by hard-working Italian Americans, Gravano's parents, both of Sicilian descent, found success as dress manufacturers with the assistance of a generous investor. Their prosperity allowed them to acquire a summer cottage on Long Island, adding a touch of comfort to their lives. From an early age, Gravano faced a unique challenge in the form of severe dyslexia. Unfortunately, this learning disability went undetected by his teachers, resulting in him being held back in the 4th grade. The humiliation he experienced triggered a violent response within him. Frustrated with the education system, Gravano decided to abandon formal schooling on his 16th birthday. At the age of 18, Gravano's encounters with the law began. In an act of aggression, he assaulted a police officer who had been harassing him. Shortly after that, he found himself in a lumberyard during an attempted burglary, leading to his arrest. Despite these criminal offenses, Gravano managed to avoid imprisonment, facing only fines as penalties. His lawyers skillfully negotiated on his behalf, suggesting that Gravano would enlist in the army to avoid jail time. True to his word, Gravano enlisted in 1964 and served as a corporal until his honorable discharge in 1968. Gravano's life took a fateful turn when he crossed paths with Shorty Sparrow, an associate of the notorious Colombo crime family. This encounter marked a significant turning point in Gravano's life as he delved into the world of organized crime, engaging in a series of predatory acts that included store and bank robberies. Gravano also found himself involved in managing after-hours clubs. While still immersed in criminal activities, he ventured into legitimate business ventures, opening a store specializing in women's clothing and accessories. However, his plans were disrupted when he discovered that one of his assistants, Ralph Sparrow, Shorty Sparrow's brother, was deceiving him. To avoid further conflicts, Gravano heeded the advice of Shorty Sparrow and transitioned to the Gambino family, becoming a member of Salvatore Toto Arella's crew. Expanding his business interests, Gravano opened additional successful after-hours clubs and operated a popular discotheque in Brooklyn. In 1980, he orchestrated the murder of Johnny Keys Simone on the orders of Paul Castellano, who was embroiled in a power struggle with Nicky Scarfo for control over Philadelphia's Cosa Nostra family. 2 years later, Gravano himself ordered the killing of Frank Fiala, a Czech-born cocaine dealer who had acquired Gravano's discotheque and office building. Fiala's failure to pay the full amount of $1 million triggered Gravano's fury. Although this unauthorized murder could have led to Gravano facing the Cosa Nostra's death penalty, he received a pardon from Castellano. While Gravano managed to avoid immediate consequences for his actions, the murder of Fiala prompted an IRS investigation. Consequently, Gravano faced charges of tax evasion but was ultimately acquitted. However, in February of the year 2000, Salvatore Gravano found himself at a significant turning point in his life. Alongside nearly 40 other individuals, including his ex-wife Deborah, daughter Karen, and son Gerard, he was arrested on federal and state drug charges. The legal consequences were severe. In 2002, Gravano received a 20-year prison sentence in New York, followed by an additional 19-year sentence in Arizona to be served concurrently. The weight of the convictions signified a prolonged period behind bars, with his expected release date set for March 2019. However, fate took an unexpected turn when Gravano was granted early release in September 2017. Now, let's delve into how Mafia members are treated, as seen through his eyes. Life within the confines of a prison presents a unique set of circumstances, especially when it comes to the intricate web of human relationships. Throughout his incarceration, Sammy managed to establish a positive rapport with his fellow inmates, regardless of their race or ethnicity. His interactions were characterized by harmony and camaraderie, often engaging in activities such as gym workouts and sparring sessions together. They all demonstrated a genuine willingness to connect and build meaningful bonds. However, one incident particularly struck a chord with him. He witnessed a fellow black inmate being subjected to derogatory slurs and mistreatment while serving food at the cafeteria. Despite the apparent indifference exhibited by the target of the racial insults, Sammy felt a need to intervene. Regrettably, his noble intentions escalated the situation, resulting in a physical altercation. The arrival of officers added a twist to the unfolding drama. However, after hearing what had happened, the officers left them to deal with the situation themselves. Nonetheless, there were consequences to face. Sammy was relegated to menial tasks in the kitchen, peeling potatoes without the trust of wielding a spoon. This incident served as a poignant reminder of the futility of trying to inflict harm using a spoon. He also recalls another incident when he shared a cell with a prejudiced inmate, a long-haired, bearded biker. Despite their stark differences, they made an effort to coexist within the confined space, engaging in conversations, albeit with occasional friction. The inmate's racist inclinations became evident as he displayed discomfort whenever interracial relationships were portrayed on television. An additional source of contention arose when the inmate's untidiness clashed with Sammy's sense of cleanliness, sparking heated arguments. However, what truly struck a chord with Sammy was when the racist inmate launched a direct attack on Sammy's daughter's interracial relationship. Eventually, the simmering tensions reached a boiling point, resulting in a night-long physical confrontation. The following day, their neighboring inmate, curious about the commotion, inquired about the events that had transpired. Their response was nonchalant but revealing. They simply stated that they had fought throughout the night. Yes, throughout the night. Although the atmosphere was tense, they managed to keep the specifics of the conflict concealed. However, when summoned by the unit manager for a meeting, suspicions surrounding the altercation were aroused. During the meeting, the unit manager confronted Sammy, disclosing that the racist inmate had accused him of engaging in a racially motivated fight. In response, Sammy chose to downplay the incident, neither confirming nor denying the allegations. The unit manager in turn offered guidance, urging them to avoid further conflicts and maintain a peaceful environment going forward. This story from Sammy's time in prison offers valuable insights into the intricate dynamics of relationships and tensions within the prison system. It serves as a lens through which to view the challenges of coexistence, the unpredictability of circumstances, and the delicate equilibrium required to navigate such an environment. In the cramped confines of their cell, the two inmates found themselves engaged in a relentless battle of physical prowess. Their fights, fueled by anger and frustration, lasted for hours on end. Each exchange of blows showcased their determination to assert dominance over the other. The physical toll was immense, leaving them battered, bloodied, and utterly exhausted. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was an unspoken understanding that these fights were not intended to be fatal. Rather, they served as a way to release pent-up emotions and assert their strength within the prison hierarchy. Despite their fierce battles, an unexpected connection emerged between the two inmates. In the face of a shared struggle, they found solace in their shared experiences and formed a unique bond. When the guard's footsteps faded away and the cell door locked, they could momentarily let go of their hatred and find moments of respite. Exhausted and bruised, they eventually found a way to coexist, allowing sleep to overcome them in the darkened cell. This reaction and the surprising, unique need for connection, despite their shared hatred for each other, are part of the complex ecosystem that Mafia members have to navigate while incarcerated. Think of it this way. When locked up, you're drained of connection, and you strive to form these bonds, sometimes even with your enemies. However, sometimes you don't even get the chance to form any connection at all, and you end up in a Supermax prison. Supermax prisons are reserved for the worst of the worst, including some Mafia members deemed too dangerous. If they've been involved in killing people in other prisons and authorities can't control them, they end up in a facility like ADX Supermax. This is a prison for those they've lost control of, individuals they don't know how to manage or handle. When Sammy was apprehended in February 2000, it was the beginning of a new and challenging chapter in his life. His journey into the prison world began with a lengthy sentence, first within the state system and then within the federal system. However, his initial experience in the prison world was in the maximum security unit, commonly referred to as the Hole. In this secluded environment, he endured 6.5 years of continuous isolation. Life in the Supermax as a Mafia member was highly controlled and isolating. Upon arrival, he confronted a stark reality in his cell. A 12-inch black and white TV with no sound, a shower, and a concrete slab for a bed. To listen to the TV, he had to use an earpiece. The provided mattress was a thin plastic sheet barely an inch thick, and there were no pillows. In this highly controlled environment, inmates were not allowed to touch the bars separating them from the outside world. Violating this rule would result in punishment from the correctional officers who carried batons for enforcement. The soundproof nature of the surroundings made it nearly impossible for inmates to communicate with each other, fostering an intense sense of isolation. Communication with prison staff was strictly limited, and the silence could be deafening. Meals were delivered through a steel door slot, with the food prepared in another prison and transported to the facility due to the logistical process. Meals and interactions with the outside world were severely restricted, contributing to the isolating and controlled environment experienced by Mafia members in the Supermax. In the Supermax, meals often sat for an hour and a half, sometimes even longer, before reaching the inmates. The quality of the food was questionable, and the limited variety provided little comfort in an otherwise harsh environment. Communication with the outside world was heavily monitored and restricted. Inmates were permitted only one phone call per month, and even these calls were under constant scrutiny. Any unfavorable remarks or content could lead to the immediate termination of the call by prison staff who listened in on the conversations. After a year of good behavior, inmates could earn the privilege of 2 phone calls per month, but the level of surveillance remained unchanged. One of the most challenging aspects of prison life for this former Mafia member was the overwhelming loneliness. From the moment he entered the system, he found himself in solitary confinement within maximum security settings. Spending 6.5 years in solitary confinement, 20 feet below ground, he knew that this was hell. However, hell in a Supermax prison was often described as worse than death. Security measures in the Supermax facility were extreme. Every movement was heavily monitored, and stepping into the prison yard felt like entering a war zone. Inmates were constantly subjected to strip searches upon leaving their cells. These searches involved complete nudity, bending over and coughing to ensure nothing was concealed. In extreme cases, a cavity search could be conducted to detect hidden contraband. The loss of privacy and dignity was a daily occurrence. Failure to comply with orders or engaging in fights in the yard would result in severe consequences, such as being shot with rubber bullets or subjected to physical beatings by correctional officers. If caught with a shank, you would be shot with real bullets. The constant presence of baton-wielding guards further reinforced the oppressive atmosphere. Sammy described his experience in the facility as pathetic, a feeling that could consume a person's soul. In the midst of this desolation, a glimmer of human connection appeared when a nurse, a good-looking woman, crossed his path. In their brief encounters, he found solace and empathy in her presence. However, his desperation for human contact led to a moment of vulnerability and desperation. He grabbed her finger, pleading with her not to leave, seeking any form of conversation and connection. Though she urged him to let go, warning him of the cameras and potential consequences, the encounter left a lasting impact on both of them. With tears in her eyes, she told him to hold on. She looked at him through eyes that saw not only a made man who had committed atrocities and deserved to be there, but also one who still possessed humanity within him. In addition to the emotional challenges, the physical dangers within prison walls were ever present. The sounds of concussion bombs exploding served as a chilling reminder of the violence that could erupt at any moment. These bombs were used when someone lost control or went on a rampage, resulting in swift and brutal retaliation from the prison staff armed with batons. The rules were clear: comply or face severe consequences. Visits from loved ones offered a flicker of hope, a temporary respite from the bleakness of prison life. However, even these moments were tainted by dehumanization. The visitation area was separated by thick glass, preventing physical contact, and communication was limited to a phone with cameras monitoring every movement. Sammy described one of his ex-wife's visits when she brought snacks and drinks from a vending machine in the lobby. Meanwhile, he was handed food and instructed to eat with his bare hands. This stark contrast in their experiences was too much for him. During the visit, he requested to use the bathroom and was escorted to a cage-like area with no privacy. A female guard stood by, watching him, refusing to grant him any semblance of privacy. The humiliation he felt was immeasurable as he was forced to relieve himself in a degrading manner. These stories illustrate just a fraction of the harsh realities Mafia members face within the prison system. The inhumane conditions, constant surveillance, and loss of personal autonomy serve as a constant reminder of the punishment and isolation endured by these incarcerated men. But the worst is yet to come. There's the existence of a hidden punishment area within the prison known as the Hole. Within the Hole, for those inmates who choose to be very stubborn, this underground space consists of a concrete slab with stirrups to restrain prisoners fully nude. If they need to relieve themselves, they must do it right there and then, waiting for a hosing to clean the space up. The psychological torment of such an environment is unimaginable. According to Sammy, there's a stark difference between how Mafia members, cartel bosses, and others in the Supermax prison are treated versus other high-level prisoners in different prisons. Even terrorists detained at Guantanamo Bay seemingly receive more humane treatment, including access to amenities and better medical care. Sammy argues that prisoners at ADX Supermax, including himself, would willingly trade places due to their oppressive and depressive environment. Imprisoned as a Mafia member, isolation and brutality define most of their life. For some, it's hell, and for others, it's just another sentence to serve. However, for all, it's wasted years. But is it worth the punishment? Was it deserved or excessively harsh? The verdict remains uncertain, and it's up to you, the viewers, to decide. Thanks for watching.